these rodents get into everything. There, that looks better.
I was sitting out there in the shed one evening, not doing too much of nothing, just kind of staring at the wall. And
hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Mr. Fix-It channel. Today in this video, I'm going to revive my old Kawasaki Ninja. It's been sitting for a few years with a blown up engine, and it's time I do something about it. Stay tuned. Alright, so this bike here is a 1990 Kawasaki ZX6 D1 Ninja. It was the first of the ZX6 line. The rest of you in the other places of the world might know this as a ZZR 600, and these bikes are getting kind of rare. It has been parked for a few years, so the last time I ran this bike I was just happily motoring along, and it decided to spin a rod bearing, so it's got some rod knock. Parts for these bikes are getting very difficult to find. eBay can produce engines for this, but they're roughly $1,000 or more, and that's a lot of money for an engine that I don't know anything about. So let's see how I'm going to do this. Okay, over here on this shelf of mystery, I've been collecting a few parts. I have a crankshaft. Somewhere down here buried there's a connecting rod. I've got a timing chain, an oil pump that I salvaged out of another bike. And I've been collecting these parts for several years now. Like I said, parts for this bike are getting kind of hard to find. But in my endless searching, I finally found pretty much a complete bike. I have the gas tank, but I do not have the seat and the side covers here. I found this bike on Marketplace. The engine does run. I got it running. I didn't film any of that because it was simple, it was just simple, clean the carburetors. Got this bike running. On top of that, this bike only shows about 6,500 miles on it. Now you're wondering, why does a bike this old only have 6,500 miles on it? Well, when I got this bike running, first thing I noticed that the starter clutch or the starter sprag is bad. I could assume that's just from somebody trying to crank this bike, trying to get it to start, you know, excessive. But the biggest issue with this engine, and the reason why I got it so cheap, is second gear is gone. No second gear. All it does is clatter when you go into second gear. No drive, no nothing, just clattering. But the engine sounds really good. And with only having 6,500 miles on it, I can only assume that the bottom end, the crankshaft, main bearings, all that stuff is good. Pistons, piston rings, everything is good. I just need to get in there and change the transmission and fix the starter sprag. Now in order to do that, I have to remove this engine from this bike, and the easiest way that I have found to remove the engines from these bikes all by myself, if you had help, it'd probably be a lot easier, but since I'm all by myself here, the best way is to disassemble the bike and pick the frame off of the engine. So that's where I'm going to get started. There's some usable parts, but this is a E model, a ZX6E, or a ZZR 600E. So the bodies and the frames are completely different, but the engines are compatible. That was a lot of talking, I understand that, but I'm just trying to get through everything, the reason why I'm here, what we're doing today. And I'm not going to film a whole lot of taking this engine out of this, because I got to take the engine not only out of this bike, but I also got to take the engine out of the other bike. So that's going to be a whole lot of work. These old engines are getting kind of rare. I'm pretty sure not many of you are going to have a bike like this. I'm not really wanting to know how to work on these bikes, but if you are, I am going to throw some tidbits in here and there. And I'm going to get the engine out of this. We're going to get it over there on the bench. I got to split the case, and we got to figure out what's wrong with the transmission. I also just want to add here and get ahead of any questions might arise. Why would I buy a whole nother bike for the engine when I have a whole bike with an engine and I got some parts for it? Well, the main reason is the parts that I got, they were out of a salvaged bike and I got them pretty cheap, but just the engine gasket set alone cost almost half, or a little more than half, of what I paid for this bike. I still need rod bearings, main bearings. While I'm in there, I might as well do piston rings, you know, go through the whole thing. And that, we're talking, it could easily be $1,000 by the time you get the coolant and the oil and all that stuff. So I think I have the parts already on hand to get this bike engine running and driving, and I'm going to swap it into that bike and that's going to be a lot quicker and a lot cheaper, and I'll have the other engine that I can continue to collect parts for and have another engine and backup for this engine when this engine dies. Hopefully it don't die, but you know, it's an old sport bike, you never know. Alright, I'm just going to start this bike up, if it'll start here, because like I said, the starter clutch is bad. But we'll fire it up, see what happens. So I don't know if you heard it there, that clank when it's fired up, that's the starter clutch. It actually fired up pretty quick, but if it struggled at all to start, it made all kinds of clattering and racket. So we'll definitely have to fix that. Hear that? That's what I'm talking about. Because Kawasaki's have what's called a positive neutral finder, you can't shift it into second gear unless the rear tire's turning. So I got it up on the center stand and fired up, see if I can't show you how bad second gear is here. Of course, the kickstand safety got me there. There's second gear, how crunchy it is. We're holding the rear brake. Second gear's just gone. So that was a lot of words, and words are cheap and labor is expensive. So let's get into this, start turning some wrenches, cue the montage. So here it is on the bench. Hopefully I have all the parts to put this thing back together. and I can get this engine a-okay and stick it in that other bike. So we need to split this thing, so I need to take this cover off. I need to take this cover, that cover off. Probably gonna pull the starter. You know, there's a few things. So the parting line for the case is right through here, and then there's the oil pan. So the oil pan's gonna come off. This case is gonna come off. There's several bolts on top, and then there's several bolts that go in through the bottom. So I'm gonna get the covers off first. We'll start there, and then I'll get everything that's on top of the motor, all the bolts and everything. It's gonna come out on this side, and then I'll flip the engine on its top, and then we'll take off all the bolts on the bottom, and then we'll split this thing. So I'm gonna start with the stator cover, and I'm gonna pull the flywheel off and check this starter sprag and see if I have the correct part for this. That's where I'm gonna start. Can I save the gasket? I'm gonna say probably not, very likely. No, not gonna be able to save this gasket. And 14. Oh, that's not a good sign. Looks like someone's cross-threaded that into the crank. Oh my God. I don't know if you can see, but it looks like somebody, I have a few choice names for people like this, but somebody tried to remove this without the proper tool. They screwed up the threads. I think the threads in the crank are okay. Oh my. So let me get the tool out and get this flywheel off of here. Alright, so this was my replacement crank for the other engine. I need a bolt. So I'm going to take the bolt out of this guy. That's how it's supposed to come out. It's even got the wrong washer on it and everything. So that's what it's supposed to look like. Yep, the threads in there are all screwed up. So now I'm going to have to get a tap in there and tap that. Hopefully I can salvage the crank. I like to thread the bolt most of the way in and push on the bolt with the forcing screw, because I don't want to mangle up the end of the crankshaft, but that looks like it's already been done. If you don't know what you're doing, buy a manual. This is the frustrating part about buying used machines. You don't know what you're getting into. Let's see, I think that's an M8 125, M10 125, okay. Okay, good. It was just the first few threads that were messed up. Okay, so we'll take this bolt and throw it in the trash. I'm going to slip this washer off. Thread the bolt in most of the way, but as long as it's not touching the flywheel, we can thread this on. Okay, we'll slip this little idler gear out with everything else here. So this thing only rotates one way. So it'll spin all day long this way, but it won't go back the other way, and that's what grabs a hold of the crank and allows the starter to crank it over. And not only do I feel roughness in that, I think I see, yeah, look at that. These bolts are backing out. See how loose that is? So when this thing starts to go and it starts making all that racket when you're trying to start it, these bolts will start to loose up. And this is pretty common. Sometimes you can just get in here and retighten these 3 bolts. If you're hearing a little rattling sound while it's idling, it might even be this thing that's loose. So you can imagine how that would make noise while it's sitting there idling. So that's no good. No bueno. So we'll take this off and we'll set it aside. I have the replacement part right here. Alright, working on the right side of the engine now. I'm going to take this cover off. This is where your pulse coils live. Oh people, what is this? A cereal box? Oh my. I think this is a cereal box. So, I haven't seen something like that in a long time. But anyway, this is your pulse coil and the rotor. Had to take this out to, because the splitting line is right across there. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this wire out and get it out of this, get this grommet out of the way here. Get this wire off. Go ahead and take this pulsar coil off. Oh, you never know what you're going to get into with this stuff. Okay, now the clutch cover's got to come off. Put my rag back down here because it's probably going to make a mess if I don't. There's a couple tabs on here that they give you to tap against. So find those. You can tap this thing loose. Go here, take the clutch out. You always want to work these crisscross a little bit at a time so you don't warp the pressure plate. Apply a little bit of pressure right there. Now we can slip this thing out of here. Yeah, the clutch looks fabulous. And then this should come off. Like so. And there's the clutch out. What's this say in here? Well, someone's been here, hence why it looks like a brand new clutch. It says washer behind basket. Someone's wrote that on there. So give me a few minutes. I want to try to save this gasket, and then we got several bolts up here we got to take out. I think I got to take the starter out. So let's continue here. Alright, let's get the old pan off. Alright, let's crack this thing open. Got a couple pry points right here. Now, as much as I wanted to save these gaskets, I'm not going to be able to save them. Well, there's no debris in the pickup screen. That's good. There's a bunch of clutch sludge down in here though. That's nasty. Some RTV from the case halves. I'm not seeing any bearing material. There's some metal shards probably from the transmission, but I think that's all clutch right there. That's first. You gotta spin the counter shaft. There we go. Second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. I don't see any bent shift forks, so it's probably just the dogs that are broke off or something, I'm not sure. So this will be second on this shaft because it's the next smallest. And what we're looking for down in between there is the shift dogs. And when that slides over, it engages into those slots there. And we're looking for the corners of that rounded off. You can kind of see the corner of that one rounded off a little bit. Maybe. And then the same thing on this gear, the inside of it will be rounded off, or these will be broken. So that's what I'm looking for. Okay, I found the problem. The gears are damaged, but because of this is why it won't stay in gear. So you see this channel, this is where this shift fork rides in. When I shift this, see how it slides into that groove? If you look right there, the tip of that rounded section is round off. So when this thing goes into second, you can see it better there. When this thing goes into second, right there, it's not actually shifting the gear over all the way. Alright, so I finally got this in the position to where I can show you. See all that movement there? That's where that lobe is worn off. But not only that, look at this gear, look at the tooth on this gear, right there. There's a tooth missing. And when I pulled the oil pan off, I heard something fall down in here. So that tooth was laying in the oil pan, and now it's down in here. So I got to dig that out when I get this apart, make sure I get that out of there. I need to spin this around and make sure there's no other teeth missing, or when I get it out of there, inspect it real close, because I don't want to leave that kind of a thing inside here. Okay, so we got to replace not only the transmission gears, but the shift drum as well, and possibly that shift fork. Alright, I believe that is all of the bolts. We should be able to start prying this thing apart now. Of course, it's going to spew oil everywhere. Yep, that's going to cause a bit of a problem. So we'll pull this transmission out. It just lifts out of here, nothing to it. It just lifts out. And then I have another transmission. So I got everything to it. I got the shift forks and everything, all the gears, the drum. So I know that transmission was good. I got to dig it out of the box and we'll get that installed. But it's getting late. It's been a long day getting that bike all tore apart. So I think I want to pick this up in the morning. But before I go, I just wanted to show you the main bearings. They look pretty good. And the rods, they feel good. Everything looks good in here. I think the engine part of this is in good shape. So, see you tomorrow. Alright, well, it's the next day. It's a little afternoon. I spent the morning, I had to clean all the gasket surfaces. I wanted to make a few gaskets. I didn't want to wait to buy gaskets, so I just made some gaskets. I had to go get some gasket sealer and some other things. So I got everything prepped. Let's go ahead and get this transmission out and we'll get that swapped in, start putting everything back together. Alright, so easy enough. This just lifts up out of here. Like that. We'll set this aside. Now there's a bunch of oil in here. I want to get that out of there, and I got to find that broken tooth. Hopefully it's in there somewhere. I'm just going to suck this out with the vacuum pump here. Yep, there it is. And the factory spared no expense on the schmoo in here. Jesus. Alright, so dropping this transmission in, the only thing you really got to worry about is there's this half moon clip here, and there's one over here, and this bearing and this bearing both have an alignment dowel, and they line up with the with this hole right there. So when you drop this in, just want to make sure you line up that bearing with that half moon clip, and on the other side you got to rotate this bearing around until that drops into there. Same thing for this shaft. Line up the half moon clip, rotate this bearing around until that hole meets the case and that drops in. That's all there is to it. Now I need to get this shift drum out, and that requires me to remove the ratcheting mechanism here, the detent arm, wheel and spring, and then I got to take those screws out there, and then the shift drum should slide out this side. Alright, to get that shift drum loose, I'm just going to jam a screwdriver in through here, hold that shift drum, take the bolt out, and I'm going to push down on this detent, and we can pull the star wheel off, and it is keyed so you can only put it in one way. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull the spring and detent out. Now we can pull the shift shaft out of there. Now we got these two screws. I'm going to use an impact driver. That just holds in this little retainer plate. You should be able to slide out the shift fork slider guides out of here now. So you don't get confused, just grab both shift forks, pull them out like this, and then slip it right back together. That way they don't get mixed up. Grab your snap ring pliers, there's a snap ring, and there is a pin in that shaft. You don't want to drop that out of there and lose that pin. You want to make sure that goes back in. I'll show you in just a second. Pull that snap ring out, pull this gear off, and there's this pin here. You want to make sure that stays in place. We can slide this shaft out just like that. Now the shift drum should just come right out. There's that guy, and then we're going to replace this with the replacement part here. I'm going to put my shift fork guide back in. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in that shaft. It goes in this way. You want the pin that rides in the shift drum to face the shift drum when you put this in. There's this notch in this shaft. You want to rotate this so that it catches that retainer plate. Do the same thing to this one. A little bit of oil. Now we can put the oil pump drive gear back on. It really helps if you're going to do something like this, to take pictures or video yourself or something like that, because there's so many intricate little pieces, and if you did something wrong you could screw something up pretty major. So just take your time, look at your manual, take pictures, video, whatever you got to do to make sure you get this all back together right. Now the star wheel, line it up with the key. Now neutral is the one star that's cut with a notch in it. That'll be neutral. Okay, now we can manipulate this. We get it in neutral right there. So when that cut off notched star is in the wheel, that's neutral. So that's where we want to keep it, right there. Alright, at this point it's not a bad idea to go ahead and practice putting this case together, because you got to reach in here and get those shift forks into position, and you're going to have gasket maker all around. You don't want to slide and mush that stuff out everywhere. Plus you want to check the operation of the transmission. So we're in neutral right now, so I'm going to go to first. There's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and there's sixth, fifth, fourth, third, second, there's second, first, neutral. Okay, so transmission's working just fine. Now I'm going to pull this back off. We'll make sure everything's clean, all the gasket surface is clean, and we'll get our RTV on there and then put this thing together for the final time. Alright, so I like to use coffee filters because they don't leave any lint behind. And I'm going to use some brake clean, and I'm going to clean this gasket surface and get it ready for the RTV. Get all the oil off of this. It's important to have this as clean as you can get it because you do not want this to leak, because that means you're pulling the engine back out, and that's not a good day when that happens. I'm also going to take a clean coffee filter here and wipe out the bearings. Make sure there's no debris in those. And I'll do the same thing to the engine case. Alright, to start with, I'm going to put just a little bit of oil on the main bearings so they don't start up dry. I'm going to be using Ultra Black. Don't use this, just use your finger, because you're only going to put the slightest little bit on here. Especially right here around the mains. Just the whisper. And all this is going to do right here is keep the oil from leaking out past the bolts. So if we put too much on right here, it'll get into the bearings, and that'll be a bad time. These engines are machined so well that you really don't need much at all of this gasket maker. I'm going to put it on just a little bit thicker around the outsides because that's where it's going to leak out at. In here it's not going to leak out of the engine, it's going to stay inside, so a little heavier on the outside here. So I'll get this stuff put on, we'll come back when I'm ready to slip it on the engine. Alright, so me lining up these forks is going to be impossible for me to show you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in underneath, and basically it's going to be this one. I'm going to grab it with my finger and line it up. You got to kind of rotate these into place as you're setting this thing down on there. Okay, all the forks are in their grooves. Everything looks good. Okay. So, got all those in the grooves. I know it's hard to see in there, but it's all good. So now I'm going to start with all the main bolts. We'll get those in first. Alright, now I got to look up the torque spec and we'll get those tight. Alright, so the book says 20 foot-pounds in sequence. I'm just going to snug them up first. And then hit them again. So I'm going to get this row of bolts across the top here. These get 104 inch-pounds. Okay, before I put this old pan on, I'm going to lube the transmission. And then you get the point, I'll tighten all these down, get them torqued, flip the engine over. Okay, all those are tight, case is together. Got a good little squish out on the gasket maker all the way around, so that should be sealed up good. Now we got to put the clutch and the flywheel and all the covers back on. Now I can see now this video is going to be pretty long. I don't know if you guys want to sit around. I know it's kind of boring watching somebody assemble an engine like this unless you're working on this specific bike. So what I'm going to do to speed up time is I'm going to, off camera, put this engine all back together. I got to tear that other bike apart, get the engine out of it, and then put this engine back in. So I think I'm going to skip most of that. If there's anything interesting that pops up, I'll get it on camera. But this is pretty much done. Slap the clutch in, couple covers, and I got to rip that bike all the way down and get the engine out of it. So yeah, let's move on. Okay, so I was just cranking the engine over, and you do that by the little hex head on this side of the engine. This is the timing plate. This is what tells the spark when to happen at the right time. And this rotated. This is not supposed to rotate. Well, I mean, it's supposed to rotate, but it's not supposed to rotate away from this crankshaft. So what I found when I popped this off is somebody had, where'd it go? Somebody had sheared the roll pin off, tried to drill it out, screwed that up. So what they did is they drilled this little hole, put that little pin in, and it's not even remotely in time. I'm surprised this engine even started up. So now I get to deal with this. It's supposed to look like that. There's a tiny roll pin that goes in there to align the timing rotor. So now I get to figure this out. I tried to drill that hole where that roll pin goes in the end of the crankshaft, and it wouldn't drill. I can only assume someone's broke off a tap or an easy out or something in that. It's rock hard, can't drill it. So I can't put the roll pin back where it belongs. The only thing that I can do is I found top dead center, and I lined the timing mark up, and I put this on, and I socked this screw down as tight as I could possibly get it without it stripping out, and that'll hold it. But this is what you're supposed to be able to crank the engine over with, you know, to do work on the valves and stuff. So if I crank on this, I could turn that, I could lose time. So you never know what you're going to find in a used engine. Buy a manual. Don't just assume. I have no idea how that roll pin got sheared off. Maybe they were trying to unscrew that with an impact. Who knows? I can only speculate. But the way it was about 20 degrees advanced timing. So it was probably going to knock and do all kinds of stuff. I kind of had a feeling it wasn't running right. It's figured I didn't get the carbs cleaned out good enough. It's within a couple of degrees at least now. So I guess if I have any issues, I know about this now, and I can maybe try to readjust that again. I'm glad I found this, because I'd have been chasing my tail trying to figure out why the bike had no power. So yeah, that's what I did. It is what it is. If I'd have known about this before I put the whole bottom end of the engine back together, I have another crankshaft right there. I literally could have just swapped that crank into this engine. Oh well. Okay, update. Where am I at? I got the engine out of that bike. It's all tore apart. Parts are all in here. I got the replacement engine sitting on the floor right there. Old engine's over there. I put that bike all back together so I can move all the parts in one movement. And I was able to get the engine out without taking the bike completely apart. But it didn't save any time, and it was a bunch of, you know, screwing around. And I'm going to try to put the engine back in the same way I took it out. But it's almost worth it to just go ahead and take it all apart. But I got so many tools and parts and stuff laying everywhere, I didn't feel like doing it. So I'm tired. I just carried that engine over from the bench. I'm not as old as I young to be or something. But let's get this engine slammed in this bike, and hopefully it'll fire up and I don't hear any knocking or rattling or anything like that. So here we are. Alright, so I got this thing to the point to where all I gotta do is add the fluids and some gasoline and a battery, and I should be able to start it up. It's getting late. I procrastinated all day. I didn't get started on this till about 3 o'clock, so there's a bunch of, you know, making sure the wiring's all right and all the hoses are tight and everything. So I'm gonna pick this up in the morning and I'll see you then. Alright, so I got fuel, I got oil, and I got coolant in it. And I didn't clean the carburetors. Yeah, I know, but the carbs are overflowing. I just got the fuel shut. I know, I should have done it. I already know. But let's stick a key in this thing and crank it over. I'm going to disable the ignition and crank it to get, you know, the oil pressure. Let's see if I just disconnect this and disconnect this. I shouldn't get any spark. Alright, that's going to be flashing. That's my low fuel. Alright, let's crank it. That light should go out eventually. Alright, let that battery rest a minute. I'll plug these coils back in. Let's see what happens. You know, I've done this so many times, tear an engine apart and put it back together, and I still get nervous. It's like, this is the moment where you find out if your days of labor are wasted. I've had a lot of good success, but then again, I've had some failures, and I don't want this to fail. Alright, so let's try this. Alright, here we go. Choke. Either not getting fuel into the engine or not getting spark. Let me hit this with some starting fluid. May not be getting any spark. Okay, let's check for spark. No spark. Okay, I did not have the pulse coils plugged in, so it was never going to spark. Let's try again. Not taking any fuel yet. Probably got to clean the carbs out. Alright, let's try the transmission now. temperature's coming up. Engine sounds good. I love this stainless 4-to-1 exhaust I put on this bike. Alright, so I'm going to let this thing continue to warm up. I got to check, make sure the cooling fan is going to kick on and off. Once that's done, then I'm probably going to pop them carbs off and go through them real good. And then we can continue to put this bike back together. Maybe go for a ride today. The sun is out, it's warm, so let's get this done. I'm excited. There we go, the fan just kicked on. Alright. Well, I mean, the carbs are pretty clean. I did drain all the fuel out of this bike before I parked it all those years ago. I mean, there's a little bit down in the bowls. It was running fine, they were just overflowing. Still feels rubbery on the needles. I don't know why it's overflowing. It should be fine. Anyway, I'll give these a good once over and we'll see what happens. So if you're having a hard time getting your needle seats to seal, what you can do is you can chuck half a Q-tip into your drill and you can go in there and you can clean out the needle seat, and you can even go a little bit further and you can put some brass polish or some aluminum polish on this. You just got to make sure you clean it out well afterwards. And you just stick this in here. You can clean out the needle seat or polish it up, and that usually fixes a problem like this. So I'm going to go through and do that to every one, and hopefully that solves this problem. Get this bike back together, maybe go for a ride today. So I kept smelling mouse pee, and I took my air box apart and found out that the mice were using my air cleaner as a toilet. Ugh, so I got to flush that out. The air filter was completely unharmed by the rodents because of this wire mesh that I had in here, so they couldn't get through that. So luckily my air filter is just fine. Alright, it's all back together. I'm going to take this thing up the street for a little test ride, expired tag and all. Don't snitch on me. Be right back. Yeah, a little adjustment to do to the clutch, but other than that, I think it's good. Only a ride will tell, but I gotta go get tags for this thing. I think if I hurry, I might be able to go today and get the tags. So let me go get tags for this and go for a ride. I'd love love to go for a ride on this thing, check everything out, make sure it's gonna be good to go. So let's see if I can go get tags. Be right back. So I've just been out riding around. Bike's doing great, love it. I'm here at the entrance of Serpent Mound. don't know if you know about this place or not, but it's a beautiful evening. We're at about 50 miles, I think. I have to look at the odometer. But yes, it's doing good. Very happy. Yep, it says 50.4 miles. So all that work paid off. As long as it holds together, we'll see what happens. So I'll catch you guys back at the shop. Well, you can tell there's been some shenanigans going on in here. Whew, God, I got a mess to clean up. Phew, look at all this. It's gonna take me an entire day to straighten this mess out. Oh well, it's all in good fun. So if you guys have that old project, that old bike, car, whatever it is, just sitting out in the shed collecting dust, you don't know what to do to it, you don't know how to fix it, you can't find parts for it, eventually you will. Eventually you'll find the part that you need, or you'll learn how to fix it, but don't give up on it. Eventually something's going to happen. Get it out, knock the dust off of it, get it fixed, take it out and enjoy it. If you guys like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Consider subscribing and don't be afraid to fix it. Thanks for watching.